You know what's so funny about Red Dead Redemption 2? People usually describe it as the best game ever made, but I don't think that's why it sticks with people. Plenty of games have better combat, plenty have faster pacing, some even have bigger maps. And yet, years later, people still find themselves reinstalling Red Dead 2 for no particular reason. They tell themselves they're just gonna ride around for an hour, maybe hunt a legendary animal, maybe replay a favorite mission, then all of a sudden, it's 3 a.m. in the morning. Somehow Arthur has grown a full-size beard, and you spent the last 45 minutes fishing instead of doing anything remotely productive. That's the magic of this game. It doesn't try to constantly entertain you, it earns your attention. Most modern open-world games are terrified that you'll get bored. Every few seconds there's another marker, another collectible, another notification screaming at your attention. They're afraid that if you spend 10 seconds doing nothing, you'll close the game. Red Dead 2 does the exact opposite. Sometimes it asks you to ride your horse across half the map while nothing important happens. No explosions, no boss fights, just two people having a conversation. And somehow, those are the most memorable moments in the entire game. Because Rockstar understood something that a lot of developers still struggle with. If you give your players enough quiet moments, the loud ones hit so much harder. Before we talk about Arthur Morgan, Dutch, or anything that makes the story unforgettable, it's worth remembering where the game actually begins. It starts in the snow. The Vanderlyn gang isn't riding into glory. They're running for their lives. A failed robbery in Blackwater has left them broke, exhausted, and hunted from every direction. Nobody really knows what happened. The details stay very vague for a long time, and that's intentional. You're dropped into the middle of a disaster instead of watching it unfold. It's one of the smartest storytelling decisions Rockstar has ever made. Instead of introducing everyone at their best, you meet them after everything has already started falling apart. Dutch is confident. Hosea is optimistic. Arthur still believes in the gang, but there are tiny cracks already there. The first few hours are full of little moments that don't seem important until your second playthrough. Someone questions Dutch, someone hesitates, someone looks a little too nervous. The game is practically whispering the ending to you from the very beginning, but you just don't realize it yet. That's one of Red Dead 2's greatest strengths. It isn't interested in shocking you. It's interested in making you feel inevitable. Every decision, every argument, every mistake, they all stack on top of each other until the collapse feels like a twist and more like gravity finally doing its job. And then, there's Arthur Morgan. At first glance, he looks exactly like the kind of protagonist you'd expect. Big guy, raspy tough voice, excellent at solving problems with his revolver. Case closed, right? Not even close. Arthur isn't introduced as some legendary hero. He's introduced as a working man. He's the one carrying food back to camp. He's checking up on people. He's doing jobs that nobody else wants to do. He's dependable. And that is what makes him interesting. Most games build the protagonist around power. Arthur is built around responsibility. He isn't a leader, and he isn't visionary. He's the guy everyone relies on when things go wrong. And over time, you start realizing how much weight he's carrying. Every camp conversation adds another layer. You see him joking with Lenny, arguing with John, listening to Hosea's advice, helping Pearson, playing with Jack. Even when you're not on a mission, Arthur feels like a real member of this community instead of the center of the universe. And that is incredibly rare. In a lot of open world games, NPCs exist because the player exists. In Red Dead Redemption 2, it almost feels like Arthur walked into a world that would have kept spinning without him. People wake up, they cook breakfast, they chop wood, they tell stories around the fire, get drunk, fight each other, sing songs, and go to sleep. Nobody stands around waiting for your player to press a button. Camp isn't just your headquarters, it's home. And that's why watching it all slowly fall apart hurts so much later. But before everything starts unraveling, Rockstar lets you live there. You celebrate after successful robberies, You play poker, you listen to campfire stories, watch people flirt, argue, laugh, and complain about absolutely nothing. Some of Red Dead's best dialogue isn't even attached to the missions. It's completely optional. You can miss hundreds of conversations without even realizing they were there. And somehow that makes the world feel so much more authentic. Real life doesn't wait for you to show up, and neither does this game. And then there's the world itself. People love talking about how realistic Red Dead 2 is, usually bringing up the horse anatomy, mud physics, and the fact that Arthur's beard grows in real time. Those details are so impressive, but they aren't why the world feels so alive. The real secret is the world reacts. Walk into town covered in blood and people stare at you. Spending too much time causing trouble and the sheriff starts recognizing your face. If you wear fancy clothes, the strangers will treat you differently as if you weren't sleeping in the swamp for 2 weeks. Stay out in freezing weather without a proper coat and Arthur complains about it. Leave camp for too long and people start asking where you've been. They're tiny details on their own, but together they convince your brain that this place exists even when you aren't looking. And even when a game convinces you of that, you stop playing a map. You started living in the world itself, and that's very, very difficult to accomplish. Even today, years after release, there are players discovering interactions that nobody has documented before. Not because Rockstar hid secrets behind impossible puzzles, because the systems are deeply layered enough that people naturally stumble into new moments. And that's incredibly different philosophy from filling a map with icons. One rewards curiosity, the other rewards checking boxes. Red Dead Redemption 2 always trusted curiosity. And that trust is what makes stepping into a world feel so special now as if it did on launch day. But as peaceful as those early chapters can feel, the game never lets you forget one uncomfortable truth. The world is changing. The age of outlaws is ending. And no matter how hard Dutch insists that one more score will fix everything, history has already made its decision. The thing about Dutch van der Linde is that the game never asks you simple questions like, is he the bad guy? Instead, it asks something more interesting. When did he become the bad guy? Because in the beginning, it's easy to understand why people followed him. He's charismatic, he speaks with absolute confidence, like every sentence he's already said was rehearsed in his head. Whether he's standing around the campfire or trying to convince the gang that another risky robbery is the answer, he always sounds certain, and confidence is contagious, especially when you're scared. The gang isn't just a group of criminals. For a lot of them, it's the only family they've ever had. Arthur was raised by Dutch. John was practically raised by him too. People like Tilly, Mary Beth, Javier, and Lenny didn't just join them because they wanted money. They joined because Dutch offered them something the rest of them never had, a place to belong. And that is what makes everything that happens later so much more heartbreaking. Nobody follows Dutch because they're stupid. They follow him because he gave them hope. And hope is an incredibly difficult thing to let go of. As the story moves forward, you start noticing little changes. Not giant dramatic moments, tiny ones. Dutch stops listening to Hosea. He gets impatient whenever someone questions him. Every failure somehow becomes someone else's fault. At first, you just brush it off. He's under pressure. The Pinkertons are getting closer. Money is running out. Maybe he's just stressed. But then another bad decision happens. And then another, and then another. Before long, you realize something is unsettling. Dutch doesn't even actually have a plan anymore. He has excuses. His favorite phrase becomes, "have some faith." And if you played the game, you probably heard that line so many times, it started sounding less like encouragement and more like a warning. Faith isn't a strategy. Faith doesn't replace preparation. Faith definitely doesn't make bad decisions magically become good ones. But Dutch keeps asking for it anyways. That's because, somewhere along the way, the gang stopped following a leader. They started following an idea, and ideas don't admit they're wrong. One of my favorite examples is how Arthur reacts to all of this. Early in the game, he doesn't spend every mission questioning Dutch. He defends him. If someone criticizes Dutch, Arthur usually pushes back. He genuinely believes that they're building towards something better. You can hear it in the way he talks. He's not just pretending, he really believes. That's what makes Arthur's character development feel so natural. His opinions don't change overnight. There's no single mission where he suddenly announces, "I've seen the light." It's slower than that. Much, much slower. He notices people getting hurt. He notices innocent lives being thrown away. He notices Dutch becoming colder. And each time it happens, another tiny piece of certainty disappears. By the time Arthur finally starts challenging Dutch openly, it doesn't feel forced, it feels earned. One thing Rockstar absolutely nailed is how believable these relationships are. Take Hosea for example. He's almost the complete opposite of Dutch. Where Dutch dreams, Hosea calculates. Where Dutch talks, Hosea listens. Where Dutch sees glory, Hosea sees the consequences. You get the feeling that for years, these two balanced each other out. Dutch supplied the vision, Hosea kept everyone alive. And once that balance starts disappearing, everything else falls apart with it. And then there's John Marston. If you've ever played the first Red Dead Redemption, every conversation with John feels different. You already know where his story ends. You already know the price he'll eventually pay. So watching him struggle with his family, argue with Arthur, and slowly grow into the man from the first game adds a layer of tragedy that newer players don't experience until much later. What's interesting is that Arthur and John aren't really rivals. They act like brothers, which means they annoy each other constantly, they disagree, they throw out insults, sometimes they genuinely get frustrated at each other. But underneath all that is straight respect. Arthur wants John to be a better father. John wants Arthur to stop pretending like he doesn't care about people. Neither one of them say those things directly, because that's not how they communicate. Their relationship feels real because so much of it is unspoken. And then there's Micah. It can be really easy to spend 10 minutes talking about why everyone hates Micah. Honestly, the internet has already done that for us. But here's what's really interesting. Micah isn't dangerous because he's stronger than everybody else. He's dangerous because he tells Dutch exactly what Dutch wants to hear. Whenever Hosea raises concerns, Micah encourages another risk. Whenever Arthur questions a plan, Micah calls him disloyal. He doesn't manipulate the entire gang. He manipulates one man. And once Dutch starts listening to the wrong voice, the rest of the gang doesn't stand much of a chance. What's clever is that Rockstar never makes Micah subtle. He's loud, he's arrogant, half the camp can't even stand him. The tragedy is that nobody noticed. Dutch stopped caring, and through all of this, Arthur is changing too. Not because of some epic speech, not because of revenge, not because the game suddenly decides it needs a redemption arc. He's changing because he's finally asking himself a question that he spent years avoiding. What kind of man have I actually become? For most of his life, Arthur judged himself by one standard. Was he loyal? That was enough. If Dutch needed him, he showed up. If the gang needed money, he'd earned it. If someone threatened his family, he handled it. But loyalty without judgment can become something very dangerous. Eventually, Arthur realizes that doing terrible things for the people you love doesn't magically make those things good. That's a painful realization, because it means admitting that some of your best regrets weren't accidents, they were choices. And from that moment on, the story quietly changes. It stops being about saving the gang. It starts becoming about saving whatever is left of Arthur Morgan. That's the turning point that transforms Red Dead Redemption 2 from a great western into one of gaming's most memorable characters. Because once Arthur begins looking inward, you realize it was never just a story about outlaws. It was always a story about whether a person can change before the time runs out. Personally, I think the way that Arthur Morgan's story ends is one of the saddest stories in gaming history ever.
What is it?
It's not good news.
I guess that.
You got tuberculosis. Really sorry for you, son. It's a hell of a thing.
The way that Rockstar suddenly just changes the story with his tuberculosis diagnosis is just... It really gives you the real life emotion like if you are Arthur Morgan himself. and I think that is top tier from Rockstar Games. Well, thanks for watching. If you like to support the channel and like to see more videos like this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And let me know in the comments, what is your favorite part of Red Dead Redemption 2? Not even off the story, maybe just your favorite mission, your favorite area on the map, your favorite side quest. Let me know in the comments because I read every single one. Thanks for watching, and once again, see ya.